It happens in the smallest moments. You want to say something, ask something, share something. But a voice inside you whispers, "Don't." You'll bother them. Don't. They're busy. Don't. You'll sound stupid. Don't. They'll think you need too much. So you stay quiet. You shrink your thoughts. You swallow your feelings. You hold your questions until they turn into confusion. You hold your emotions until they turn into heaviness. And no one ever knows. Because on the outside, you look calm, independent, low maintenance, easy to handle. Someone who doesn't need anything. But inside, you're carrying entire conversations you never speak. Entire questions you never ask. Entire versions of the truth that stay locked in your throat. You always feel like you're bothering people. Even when you're not. Even when they wouldn't mind. Even when they actually want you to speak. And you don't know why. But deep down, you do. Because once, a long time ago, someone made you feel like your presence was too much. Someone made you feel like your needs were extra. Someone made you feel like your feelings were inconvenient. Someone made you feel like your voice took up too much space. Maybe it was a parent who sighed when you needed attention. Maybe it was a caregiver who acted annoyed when you asked questions. Maybe it was a friend who made jokes about you being clingy. Maybe it was a partner who punished you for needing emotional closeness. Maybe it was a teacher who shamed you for speaking up. Maybe it was a world that rewarded you only when you stayed quiet. Whatever it was, it taught you something powerful. If I want to be accepted, I must take up less space. If I want to be loved, I must not need anything. If I want people to stay, I must not burden them. So you shrink. You minimize yourself. You become lighter, quieter, smaller. You become the person who apologizes for everything. For reaching out, for asking something simple, for taking too long to decide. For wanting reassurance, for existing in someone else's space. You say sorry before speaking. You say never mind after speaking. You say it's okay even when it isn't. You let people interrupt you. You let people overlook you. You let people assume you're fine when you're not. Because the fear of annoying someone is stronger than your desire to be understood. This fear doesn't come from weakness. It comes from conditioning. It comes from growing up in environments where you were rewarded for silence and punished for expressing needs. So you learn to self-monitor. Self-filter. Self-edit. Self-shrink. Self-silence. You learn to think 10 steps ahead. How will they take this? Is this the right time? Will they think I'm needy? Will they think I'm dramatic? Will this make them leave? You rehearse conversations in your head. You rewrite messages 3 times. You delete things before sending them. You keep the deepest parts of yourself tucked away so no one can use them against you. You don't want to be a burden. You don't want to be too much. You don't want to be the reason someone rolls their eyes, even silently. So you care for everyone else quietly. You support them without asking for support back. You listen to their long stories while telling yourself yours are unimportant. You show up emotionally for people who have never shown up for you. You give without asking. You help without mentioning your own stress. You stay to comfort people who would never stay for you. But you don't resent them. You resent yourself. For not speaking. For not asking. For not believing you deserve the same kindness you give away so easily. People think you're independent. but you're just used to doing everything alone because you never want to trouble anyone. People think you're low maintenance. But you've simply suppressed your needs for so long that you don't even know how to express them anymore. People think you don't care. But you care so much that you don't want to inconvenience anyone with your feelings. People think you're quiet. But silence is the safest language you know.
You don't notice how much you hold back. Not until someone asks you a simple question like, "Why didn't you tell me?" And you freeze. Because you don't know how to answer something that requires you to admit the truth. I didn't want to bother you. I didn't want to be too much. I didn't want to seem needy. I didn't want you to feel annoyed by me. This instinct sits inside you like muscle memory. Automatic, fast, constant. You never even question it. It feels natural to hide the things you feel. It feels safe to keep everything to yourself. Because somewhere along the way, you learned that your silence is less risky than your honesty. Your quietness is easier to manage than your vulnerability. Your distance is safer than your closeness. You always worry you're taking up space that isn't meant for you. You always think the timing is wrong. You always assume they don't want to hear from you. So you retreat. You disappear a little. You hold yourself back like you're protecting people from your presence. You don't realize how much this shapes your relationships. You choose people carefully. You attach slowly. You open your heart inch by inch. You wait for signs that it's safe to speak. And even when you do speak, you hold your breath, waiting for a reaction that never comes. You fear becoming a burden so deeply that you become a ghost inside your own life. Present but not fully, visible but not really seen, connected but always at arm's length. You say, "It's okay, I'm fine," before anyone even asks, because you assume they won't ask. You assume they don't really want to know. You assume your emotions will make things harder for them. You assume things that hurt you, and you call it being considerate. You feel like you're bothering people even when they love you, even when they enjoy your presence, even when they want to help, even when they repeatedly show up for you. Because inside you, a belief lives like a stubborn shadow. If I ask for too much, they'll leave. If I express too much, they'll get tired. If I speak too much, they'll pull away. So you silence yourself. You silence your needs. You silence your fears. You silence your heart. And then you wonder why the connection feels shallow, why you don't feel understood, why you feel lonely even around good people. It's not that people can't understand you. It's that you never give them the chance. You've been trained to expect rejection even when no one is rejecting you. You anticipate annoyance before anyone gets annoyed. You expect abandonment before anyone even thinks of leaving. So, you shrink first. You disappear first. You abandon yourself before anyone else can. It becomes a habit, a pattern, a way of surviving. Where does it come from? Where does this fear of bothering people begin? It usually starts in childhood, in homes where expressing emotions felt like walking on eggshells, in families where talking too much meant getting in trouble, in places where your needs were met with irritation instead of support, in conversations where you felt unheard, unseen, dismissed, or punished. You learned to scan the room before speaking, to study people's moods before sharing anything, to adjust yourself to keep peace, to be easy so no one gets upset. You learned that silence was safer than honesty. And now you carry that training into adulthood like a quiet wound. That's why even conflict terrifies you. You don't argue, you don't confront, you don't say when something bothers you. Because you're afraid of the reaction, scared of being seen as dramatic, scared of being labeled too emotional. So you internalize everything. You swallow your hurt. You replay situations in your head, wondering if you're overreacting. You downplay every emotion because you fear the world won't take it well. You convince yourself your needs are small, even when you're hurting, even when you're exhausted, even when you're breaking inside. You convince yourself you don't need help, even when you desperately do. And then you wonder why it feels so heavy all the time. Why your chest feels tight, why your thoughts feel loud, why your relationships feel distant. It's because you're carrying everything alone, not because no one cares, but because you don't want to trouble anyone with your pain. You always feel like you're bothering people because you never learned that your presence is allowed. You never were taught that your needs matter just as much as anyone else's. You never were taught that it's safe to ask, safe to speak, safe to be imperfect, safe to be a human with emotions. You weren't taught reassurance, you were taught restraint. You weren't taught communication, you were taught self-silencing. You weren't taught connection, you were taught survival through self-reduction. So even now, when someone asks, "How are you?" your instinct is to lighten your truth, to shrink your reality, to give the version that keeps everything smooth. You tell half-truths, soft truths, safe truths, because the real truth feels too heavy to hand to someone else. But the part of you that stays silent is the part that needs connection the most, the part that wants someone to stay, the part that wants someone to listen, the part that wants to finally speak without fear. You don't want to be distant. You don't want to be quiet. You don't want to be invisible. You don't want to be the person who hides every emotion. You want to be understood without apologizing. You want to express yourself without guilt. You want to take up space without fear. You want to ask for comfort without feeling like a burden. You want to be able to text someone without overthinking it. You want to ask questions without rehearsing them. You want to share your feelings without talking yourself out of it. You want to exist in someone's life without believing you are too much. And the truth is, you are not too much. Your emotions are not too much. Your presence is not too much. Your questions are not too much. Your love is not too much. If someone made you feel that way, that was their limitation, not your fault. Someone else's inability to handle your emotions does not make your emotions a burden. Someone else's lack of patience does not make your needs unreasonable. Someone else's failure to love you properly does not make you unlovable. You are allowed to speak. You are allowed to ask. You are allowed to feel. You are allowed to be supported. You are allowed to take up space without apologizing for it. You aren't a disturbance. You just have a tender heart shaped by years of walking carefully. You're not annoying. You're just afraid of losing what matters. You're not clingy. You're just craving the emotional safety you never received. You're not overreacting. You're responding to old wounds that were never healed. You're not too much. You've just spent your life around people who made you feel small. You think you're bothering people, but the truth is, anyone who cares about you doesn't feel bothered. Anyone who genuinely wants you in their life welcomes your messages, welcomes your questions, welcomes your voice, welcomes your presence. You don't have to be light to be loved. You don't have to be silent to be accepted. You don't have to be invisible to feel safe. You don't have to carry everything alone anymore. The world doesn't need you to shrink. It needs you to show up. Slowly, gently, at your own pace, but fully. You are not a burden. You are not a bother. You are not an inconvenience. You are someone who learned to reduce themselves to survive. And now you're learning to expand again. Little by little, word by word, moment by moment. You deserve people who feel lucky to hear from you, lucky to know you, lucky to understand you, lucky to walk beside you. You deserve the kind of connection where you never have to wonder if you're too much again. Because you're not. You never were.